Namaste. This is David Hawthorne at astroview.com. Today is the 20th of November, 2013. The following is the Vedic astrology reading for John F. Kennedy, Jr., based on the 25th of November, 1960, at 12:22 a.m. in Washington, D.C. Now, using the systems approach to interpreting horoscopes and using Vedic astrology and the sidereal zodiac, then we see it right here in the first house, the number 5. This is the ascendant or rising sign, and this is Leo rising sign at 18 degrees, with Rahu, the northern node of the moon, in the first house at 18 degrees. Now we know that Leo rising sign persons are extremely intelligent and independent. Leo is the only rising sign of the 12 signs ruled by the royal sun, which is the king of the planetary cabinet. So Leo-born rising sign persons are usually very independent and very intelligent. Often they work for themselves. But they are the king, so the king will do things his own way. Sometimes will ask for advice from the high priest, but in the end he makes his own decision. The only problem for the king is that the second house of wealth and status is Virgo. And this is ruled by the fast-moving Mercury, so the king is often putting out fires in the court, as it were. Now in this chart we see Leo is in the first house. It's a fixed sign, ruled by the sun. We have Virgo in the second house. We have Mercury in Libra in the third house. We have Sun in the 8th sign of Scorpio in the 4th house. In the 5th house of Sagittarius, we have Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. In the 6th house, we have Capricorn. In the 7th house, we have Aquarius, with Moon in Aquarius, and the southern node of the Moon, Ketu, in Aquarius. In the 8th house, we have Pisces. 9th house, we have Aries. 10th house, we have Taurus. 11th house, we have Gemini, with Mars in Gemini. And in the 12th house, we have the sign of Cancer. Now we say with Rahu in the first house, the person has charisma, magnetic personality, fame and fortune, energy and ambition. And Mercury in the third house gives good communication skills, good writing, business, brokering, communication skills. In fact, he did ultimately own his own magazine called George. Sun in the 4th house of parents gives royal parents. His father was President of the United States. His mother was First Lady of the United States. In the 5th house of education, we have Jupiter, which is the planet of education and law, and he became an attorney. He has Venus in the 5th house of mind and education, and Venus is entertainment in the fashion, design, the arts, so he had a fashion magazine. And he had Saturn in the 5th house, which also gives very conservative approach to life. Saturn rules the 7th house of marriage, so it can give him an educated wife as well. Over in the 7th house of Aquarius, in the 7th house of marriage, we have Moon, can give him a very beautiful wife, and we have Ketu, can give him a very spiritual wife. And up here in the 11th house, we have Mars. This is the house of gains and income, so he can gain income through Mars, which is property and real estate. Now here's a very powerful example of how systems approach to interpreting horoscope gives very good insights. According to systems approach, the rising sign degree is not an arbitrary number. It is the most effective point of all 12 houses, and any planet close to the most effective point is very potent, has a tremendous impact. And any time you're reading any chart, if you see Rahu and Ketu close to the rising sign degree, this can cause extremes in a person's life. Extreme highs and extreme lows. Rahu and Ketu are mathematical ecliptic points in the zodiac. They can cause an eclipse, darkness, total calamities. Rahu is the planet of desires and ambition, charisma, fame, fortune, energy, like nobody's business. So he was very good looking, very well respected, tremendous charisma, powerful. They wanted him to run for the presidency of the United States, or at least as a senator to start with. But when Rahu and Ketu are on the rising sign degree, then they afflict the houses they occupy and the houses they aspect. And Rahu aspects 5 houses away, 7 houses away, and 9 houses away. Ketu afflicts 5 houses away, 7 houses away, and 9 houses away. So now we see a very powerful picture in life here. So Rahu is afflicting the first house, so it can bring a catastrophe to him, a calamity, an eclipse of him, and he died in a plane crash. He was flying the plane, as a matter of fact. Rahu afflicts the 5th house over here, which is children and education. He had no children. Even though he became an attorney, he failed the bar exam 3 times. So there was an eclipse of Jupiter, which is education. Rahu is afflicting the 7th house of marriage. His wife was killed in the same plane crash. And Rahu afflicts the 9th house of father. His father was assassinated. This is very powerful. Very powerful illustration. If Rahu and Ketu had not been on the rising sign degree, a different story. If somebody comes to you and they want to do a cesarean birth to protect the life of the mother or the child, then you want to make sure that Rahu and Ketu are not on the rising sign degree. You can adjust it by 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour, whatever. But get them off the rising sign degree, because that always causes some calamity in a person's life. Moreover, this Rahu is not only afflicting this house, the 5th house, which means it undermines the strength of Jupiter, it undermines the strength of Venus, which is wife, Jupiter, children, and education, and undermining the strength of Saturn, ruling marriage and partnerships. But at 18 degrees, look at, it's also afflicting Venus, which is wife. So his wife was killed in the same plane crash. And this Ketu afflicts 5, 7, and 9 houses away. Look at this Ketu at 18 degrees afflicting this Mercury at 19 degrees. And Mercury rules the 2nd house, which is continuation of family life. So it causes discontinuation of family life. So for example, his father was assassinated, but he also lost an older sister who was stillborn, and he lost a younger brother who only survived for 2 days. So that caused discontinuation of family life. In fact, see, Ketu is afflicting that 11th house, which is older siblings. So he's got an older sister who's born stillborn. And Ketu afflicts the 3rd house of younger siblings, so his younger brother only survived for 2 days. Let's look over here to the timing of events. He is born in a Mars main period and a Venus subperiod. Now, this started before he was born. He was this subperiod of Venus, and then it changed to the Sun in April 61. But what happened was that back up here a little bit until November 60, that's when his father was elected as president of the United States. So it was during his Mars-Venus period. So let's look at Mars. Mars rules the 9th house of father. It's in the house of gains. And Venus is also at 18 degrees, so it's blessing this house of education, mind, children, and it's blessing the 11th house of gains, where Mars, ruling the 9th house of father, is placed. So this is a good main and sub period. His father was elected as president. Now let's take a look at when his father was assassinated. His father was assassinated in November 1963. So that was between the Rahu main period and the Rahu sub period, before the Jupiter sub period took place. So right in here. So it was double Rahu. His father was assassinated. Rahu in the 1st house brings calamity to the native, and it aspects 5, 7, and 9 houses away. And 9 houses away is the house of father. Let's also take a look at the time of death here. He was killed in a plane crash in July 1999, so it was during Saturn and Mercury. See, in April 99 he went into Saturn, Mercury. He never made it to Saturn, Ketu. So it was right in here, July 99. He was killed in a plane crash. Like July 16th, 1999. Mercury subperiod. Saturn main period. Okay, Saturn rules relationships and marriage. Saturn is sitting in a house under the affliction of Ketu, of Rahu, and because it's within 5 degrees, it's also directly afflicted by Rahu. So there's 2 Rahu influences, 1 on this house and 2 on Saturn. Also, it's on Venus ruling wife and on Saturn ruling the 7th house of marriage. So he died and his wife died. And the subperiod was Mercury. Mercury rules the 2nd house, continuation of family life, and Ketu at 18 degrees, aspects 5, 7, and 9 houses away. So Ketu is directly afflicting Mercury, and Ketu is afflicting Libra, the house where Mercury is sitting. So 2 major issues with Mercury there as well. We can also discuss a little bit about Mother. Again, the royal sun in the 4th house of Mother and in the 4th house of Parents gives him royal parents. But Moon, representing Mother, is weak at 4 degrees infant state, and it's ruled by Saturn, which is afflicted by Rahu, and in a house afflicted by Rahu. This also brings tragedy to his mother, so his mother lost her husband, and it cut short her lifespan. She died at the age of 64 from lung cancer, having been quite a heavy smoker for many years. So this is a very powerful illustration of not only Vedic astrology, but more importantly, the systems approach to Vedic astrology, the systems approach to interpreting horoscopes. I've studied over 100 books on Vedic astrology. None of them discuss the power of Rahu and Ketu on the most effective point. In fact, none of the books discuss the power of the most effective point, except for the 10 books written by Professor V.K. Chowdhury, who is the founder of Systems Approach to Interpreting Horoscopes. So I highly recommend that if you're going to study Vedic astrology, you study the Systems Approach to Interpreting Horoscopes, because it gives a much more refined perception, and you'll give much more accurate and relevant readings. We can look down here in the Navamsa chart, 1/9 divisional chart, and we see that Venus here is debilitated in Virgo. Venus is wife, so his wife died in a plane crash. And Moon here, Mother, is debilitated. That made his mother very vulnerable, so she had a lot of issues in life. He does have an exalted Jupiter, he does have an exalted Saturn, but still we would say there's some trouble here. And in fact, the Navamsa chart is ruled by a debilitated Mercury. So that also causes trouble for continuation of family life. Okay, these are the main points from the chart for John F. Kennedy Jr. If he had been my client many years ago, I think we could have done some remedies. There are remedies for whatever we find in a chart. We can do propitiations for Rahu and Ketu, and we can strengthen the planets that are weak because of the afflictions. Namaste.